Prodigy's newest area, the Dragon Isle, is not easy. Especially when you get to the later rifts, it gets harder and harder, and there is a lot of strategy involved in completing the rift runs. So in this video, I'm going to try my best to teach you the best strategies to use for successfully completing rift runs in the Dragon Isle, especially as they get harder and harder. So let's talk some strategy. So like I said, strategy is extremely important in the Dragon Isle because you have all these different advantages and disadvantages that you'll be getting and being randomized with, and certain pets that will have the different disadvantages for you. They'll have advantages in like whatever team you'll need to choose. There's just a lot of strategy. So basically, of course, as you go into a rift to complete a rift run, you immediately have to start figuring out your strategy. So you start by, of course, heading into the portal. Sorry, my internet is a little slow right now. Currently I'm on Rift 16, so it is pretty tough at 16, but it gets harder and harder as you go up. So obviously you use one of your rift keys to enter a rift, and immediately you get yourself an advantage. This advantage is always randomized, but this time I got the absorb fire advantage. That means, as it describes, fire spells heal instead of damage your team by 50%. So if you get hit, like if an enemy casts a fire spell at you, instead of taking damage from you, it will heal you. So that is a really good one, and you're actually going to want to try to choose pets with fire spells, like teams with maybe fire spells, so that you're more likely to get healed by a fire spell. So that's a strategy for using your advantage well. And also, of course, we have these three different teams, and they each have a randomized disadvantage for you. The first one is speed down. Your team has a lower speed by 20%. So like your team's speed is decreased by about 20%. And of course it describes each one for you, so very helpful there. And you get different bonuses of coins for whatever you choose, and you succeed when you do that. So the second team has a higher damage disadvantage, and the advantages are green, the disadvantages are purple, so keep that in mind. Higher damage, all damage dealt to the player team's units is increased by 10%. So anytime that you get hit, the damage is more than it would be without this disadvantage, so I don't suggest choosing that one. Then let's look at the Reflect Ice. Enemies reflect ice spells back at whoever cast them. So basically, if you cast an ice spell, then you will you'll get hit by your own ice spell. That's how that works. And that can also be an advantage for you too, just like the heal fire spells, reflect ice spells, and of course there's different ones for each element. You can receive that as an advantage. But really just take a look at all three of the ones that you have. They're going to be randomized, so not these three exactly, unless you happen to get that randomly. And take a look at what is best for your situation. So me personally, I'm going to choose the member one, which is Reflect Ice. If you're not a member, you can't choose it. You'll have two to look through. But in this case, I'm going to choose the Reflect Ice, particularly because on my team, I am not going to be using any pets that have ice spells. So, like, I'm not going to be using ice spells. And also, keep in mind that this disadvantage will stay throughout the entire rift run. So all three battles, you will have to deal with this disadvantage, and it keeps building on the other two battles as well. So, yeah, you wouldn't want, if you're choosing this one, you don't want any pets with ice spells for the entire Rift run. And you can only use each pet one time per Rift run, so keep that in mind as well. So, yeah, my team right here does not have any ice spells, Mimic and Brumble. These are the first two pets it chose for me. That's the one I usually go with, and then I change my team depending on what I want for the second matchup. But when you get to your team, just look at like your enemy's weaknesses, look at your advantages and disadvantages, and then choose your pets according to what you have there. So we're just going to start this battle. And remember, just don't use any ice spells, because if you have, of course, the reflect ice disadvantage, then you're not going to be helped out by any ice spells. You will only be harmed. So just do that and do your best to take out the enemies, of course. It's very important that, well, you don't get taken out yourself, obviously, but especially on the first one, you don't want that. You don't want that on any of the battles, but just be very careful about what spells you're using. Always check the advantages and disadvantages. You can click them at the top. The squares at the top, you can click them to see their descriptions if you need them. So that's very useful. And yeah, just pay attention to each and every one of those the entire Rift run through all three battles, so that you don't make any careless mistakes, which is very easy to do. It's very easy to make a careless mistake here because you forget what you may have or something like that. You just have to be very careful and use your advantage to your advantage as well. Let's go, like, while we're just sitting here, I'm going to go through some of the other advantages and disadvantages you might see. You might see, like, you get more critical hits, or your team, or your, the opponent gets more critical hits. You may have a disadvantage where your wizard's gear is removed, so you only have Starbit and all-out attack. That's not the best, but you could do well with it. There's a really, really good advantage for you where you can, like, each of your team members will revive and heal. So it revive once and heal, so that's very useful. It's called Phoenix, so try to well, if you get that one through your randomizer, then that's great. You want that one for sure. It's very good. There's just plenty of options, like there's ones for each element. Yeah, there's different ones for each element of the like reflecting and healing. So let's just looking at these three ones themselves. There's hearts down. You have fewer hearts by 15%. Your team's plant spells do less damage by 20%, and your team gets fewer critical hits. So yes, those are three different examples of disadvantages. There are a ton of them, such as target randomizer. Your team's spells all hit random targets. That's a very interesting one. There's cooldown as a disadvantage that you don't want. Your team has your team's spells have a cooldown of at least 2. So yeah. Oh, and going back to that Phoenix one, the one where your team heals, that's also a disadvantage. So one of these battles could have the enemies doing that too. Don't choose that. You don't want that. So just choose what's best for your team. There's also one that's called Enemy Survivor. Enemies survive any damage if they have more than 1 heart. So, like, if you get hit and you have more than 1 heart, then you stay at 1 heart until the next time you get hit. That's very interesting. You want that as an advantage, but you don't want that as a disadvantage. Try not to choose that one. But yeah, there are a lot of different options, and you'll come across a bunch of them as you do your rift runs. But I hope that this has helped you understand what you do and don't want to choose, because remember, whatever you choose for the second battle will also be applied. The first battles one will also be applied. So in this one, it's the reflect ice, so that's a disadvantage that will be applied. And then your second battle's disadvantage will also be applied to your third battle, so you'll have 3 different disadvantages and 1 advantage for your third battle. So that's where it gets the hardest, and you want to be the most careful. And also, like I said before, the rifts get harder, so like enemies get more bonuses and all of that the higher up you go. So it's very it gets very hard for sure. It's just very important to use these strategies to help you. And then just briefly, when you go to the dragons and fight the dragons, I do want to mention that the astral dragon is, of course, the hardest one. But the astral dragon and the physical dragon, you want as many physical spells as possible. Those do the most damage to the astral and physical dragons. And for the shadow dragon, you are going to want as many astral spells as possible. So use like Regalaxy or Frozra if you have them, or Cometi, and whatever astral spells your wizard you can put on your wizard are great. And for the astral dragon, you do want multi-hit spell so that you can take out its shield, because it will start shielding from like 1 turn or 2 turns per battle depending on how high you are. And you're going to want a multi-hit spell. That's the only way to take the shield out. So very important. Like that's like if you have one player on your team, you just want a multi-hit spell. I'll go over it in a separate video. But also, if you're looking for how to, what's the strategy on the lucky loot, why am I not getting any gear items, there is no strategy. It's very unlucky. It's very unlikely that you'll get the gear items. That's just the way it's programmed right now. We're all going through that. It's not just you. So anyway, just what do you think about the Dragon Isle? What do you think about these strategies? And are they going to help you? Just let me know all of your thoughts in the comments.